is? Okay, so just let me know when we're rolling.
You're on the air.
Mr. White, are we recording? Are we ready to begin? Okay, very good. Well, thank you and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this hearing of the Ad Hoc Committee on Comprehensive Job Creation Plan. Today is November 18th, 2020. I'm Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and we're ready to begin. For the members of the public who may be listening in, we'll be taking comment on today's agenda items shortly. We will not be taking general public comment as this is a special meeting. So I will ask you to contain your comments to items that are on the agenda today. Variance from that will be considered to be disruptive of the meeting. So I'll ask you to either get on topic or we'll need to move on to other speakers. So with that, let's go ahead and call the roll. Mr. White?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were still on. Okay,
Yes.
Let's go ahead and begin with the roll call and establish a quorum, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Krikorian.
Here.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
Councilmember Harris Dawson.
Present.
Quorum is present. Mr. Chair, you may proceed.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we will begin with any public comment that we have on agenda items today. So if I could ask that those instructions please be read out, and we'll go ahead and begin with taking the first speakers.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to read the speaker call-in instructions?
If you wouldn't mind, yes.
Yes, sir.
And just again, just so that we're clear, we will only be taking comment on items on today's agenda. We will not be taking general public comment.
Very good. In conformity with the Governor's Executive Order N2920 of March 17th, 2020, and due to concerns over COVID-19, this Los Angeles City Council committee meeting will be conducted telephonically. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call area code 669-254-5252. That's 1-669-254-5252. And use meeting ID number 160-655-3266. That's ID number 160-655-3266, and then press this pound sign. Press pound again when prompted for a participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we can go ahead and invite our first speaker, please.
Mr. Chair, there are currently 3 speakers on the queue. Speaker with the last 4 digits 4024, please dial *6 to unmute yourself and identify yourself and what items you'd like to speak to.
Go ahead, speaker. Okay, we'll go on to the next speaker, please.
Okay, speaker with the last 4 digits 5176, please dial *6 to unmute yourself and then identify yourself and which items you would like to speak to.
Yes, go
Speaker
ahead,
with the
speak.
last four digits. Speaker with the last four digits 5176. Please again dial *6 to unmute yourself, and then identify yourself and which items you would like to speak to.
Good morning, council members. This is Adam Lane from the Los Angeles Business Council. I'd like to speak on item number 3.
Very good. Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the Los Angeles Business Council, I'm glad to express our strong support for the development of the city's new regional solicitation system. As you know, the LABC has been an ardent supporter and champion for the city's efforts to modernize its procurement system into one that expands access for small, diverse, and women-owned businesses. With the LA region slated to receive billions of dollars in investment over the next decade, now is the precise time to revamp the city's solicitation system. While the city faces an economic shortfall, this new platform can be leveraged to increase economic activity, support small businesses, and to ensure local dollars stay local. We're honored to have worked in partnership with Councilmember Krikorian and organized our coalition of over 50 supporters to transform the LABC's Compete for LA study-in initiative into a major overhaul of the city's existing systems. I want to express our gratitude towards Councilmember Krikorian for his steadfast leadership on this issue, as well as Hannah Levian in his office, to Councilmembers Blumenfield and Harris-Dawson for their support of this overhaul, and to CPO Shannon Hoppes and her team for putting together the Phase 1 development report and for accepting feedback from the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four digits 1403. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself, and then identify yourself and which items you'd like to speak to.
Go ahead, speaker.
Again, caller with the last four digits 1403. Dial *6 to unmute, and then identify yourself and which items you'd like to speak to.
I'm trying to speak, motherfucker. Can you hear me now?
Speak to the agenda item, or you'll be considered to be disrupting this meeting.
He muted me, motherfucker. Okay. Now, I'm talking about solicitation. I support number 3. It's very good. Because you see, my line of business, I'm a pimp for the record, and I can put my bitches up on my
Okay, this
solicitation.
has nothing to do with the agenda. Cut off the speaker, please. He's done. He's disrupting the meeting. Cut him off, please. He's done.
Hey, wait, motherfucker. I talk about my bitch.
He's done. All right. Are there any other speakers on the queue?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there were a couple more lines that just dialed in. So I'm going to go back to the first speaker with the last four digits 4024. Please identify yourself, dial *6 to unmute, identify yourself and which items you'd like to speak to.
Okay, he's done. Move on to the next one.
Call-in user, there's no number to identify the user, but there's a caller who can unmute themselves with *6 and then identify themselves and which items they'd like to speak to.
Go ahead, speaker.
Okay. Last caller is caller with the last four digits 9948. Please dial *6 to identify yourself and which items you'd like to speak to.
Yes, this is Samantha Salmon calling in regards to the Good Food Zone policy. And I'm just calling to urge the council members to support the Good Food Zone policy implementation. It was passed 8 months ago, and it hasn't started yet, and healthy food businesses need support.
Okay. I'm afraid that's not on our agenda today, but thank you very much for your call. Okay, are there any other speakers on the queue?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we just had one additional speaker call in. I don't have a number for them, but call in user 2. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, so please dial *6 and then identify yourself and which items you'd like to speak to.
Cut him off, please. Thank you, you're done. Okay, let's move on then to item number 1, please, on the agenda.
Item 1,
And that will close public comment on all agenda items. Let's call item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clay McCarter with the CLA. Item number 1, motion Krikorian Price Blumenfield instructing the Economic Workforce Development Department and the Chief Legislative Analyst, along with other departments, to report on recommendations for a new comprehensive jobs plan.
All right. Thank you. Well, members, this is sort of the next step in the progression of the work that we've done here in preparing for the economy of the future and creating an opportunity for jobs expansion, particularly given all of the disruptive changes that are happening right now in our local economy. It's time that we look forward now that we've had such great progress with the comprehensive job plan that we've developed and the steps that we've taken to implement its recommendations. It's time to look forward to the next iteration of that. And that's what this motion is about. So I would ask for your aye vote unless anyone would like to discuss this matter. Mr. Blumenfield. Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Certainly support this item. Want to echo that, but I also want to make sure we focus not only on what the city can affirmatively do for job creation, but what we can do to get out of the way, where we can reduce administrative burdens that make it harder for business to get approvals and permits, inspections. I look at the cannabis industry, for example. It's important to get the policy right, but we have been so slow in getting new businesses licensed that provide well-paying jobs, create economic opportunities for disadvantaged communities, and bring in boatloads of needed revenue. I just want to, as we start to think about, and I just want that to be part of the direction, it doesn't have to be formalized, but we think about what are these new steps, making sure that we're also thinking about how do we get out of our own way and how do we sort of liberate some of these businesses and do our job better so that these businesses can thrive during this difficult time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blumenfield. Mr. Harris-Dawson, anything on this? Okay, then let's go ahead and call the roll, please. The recommendation is to approve the motion.
Committee members, actions to approve the motion. Krikorian.
Aye.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Harris-Dawson.
Yes.
The action is approved.
Very good. Thank you very much. That will bring us to item number 2.
Item 2, Mr. Chair, is an EWDD verbal report relative to the Jobs and Economic Development Incentive Zone and the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy programs.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, council members. Daisy Hernandez with the Economic and Workforce Development Department.
Good morning.
Good morning. On the call is we also have Jackie Rodriguez, who will be providing some of the information during the presentation. I would like to start with information and an update on the SEDS, on the Citywide Economic Development Strategy. In 2017, the Mayor and City Council instructed the Economic and Workforce Development Department to develop the SEDS. The SEDS was developed in collaboration with various city departments and with input from community stakeholders and business and industry experts. The plan was approved by City Council in September 2019. The plan has long-term goals of making the city a world-class city and ensuring that growth is equitable, that it promotes resiliency of core industries. There's long terms of supporting emerging industries and small businesses in the city and creating financial opportunities for disadvantaged Angelenos. And all this can be accomplished by enhancing the way that we deliver economic development in the city. Now, to accomplish these long-term goals, the SEDS also includes a 5-year implementation plan with specific action items. Our department started working on tasks to carry out these action items. In December 2019, we convened the Economic Development Working Group with representatives from key city departments, and this was to help us increase coordination of the delivery of economic development activities. However, implementation has been delayed due to the current pandemic. which has required for most of our staff in EWDD to focus on emergency programs. As our staff transitions back to non-emergency duties, we will continue the efforts to carry out the 5-year implementation plan as established by the SEDS. Now, I would like to take a moment to say that throughout the SEDS, the message is clear. The city needs to allocate additional resources for economic development. Now, in order to promote investment and job creation, we need to provide support to small businesses and emerging industries. We need to help preserve businesses and encourage job-producing policies. Now, COVID has brought additional challenges to the city's economic growth, and it has also impacted the city's budget, which limits the city's ability to allocate financial resources to carry out some of these action items. However, some of the tasks that are included in the sets can be implemented by enhancing our existing business source system. We already have the framework. We already have the system to deliver a lot of the services needed by businesses. So in the report that is forthcoming, we are proposing new and enhanced services to address this. So it'll help us accomplish, of course, helping the businesses and certainly accomplish the goals that are established in the SEDS. So please look out for that. It's forthcoming pretty soon. Now, Jackie, I'll turn it over to Jackie. She'll provide an update on the Jedi program, and then we'll take questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Jackie Rodriguez, Assistant Chief with the Economic and Workforce Development Division. Brief overview on the Jedi Zone program. We have received 6 motions with 9 potential zones. These include council districts 2, 3, 7, 9, 13, and 15. This process began, I think the establishment policy has been ongoing, but once we were able to have the establishment policy for the Jedi zones, we began looking at expanding our data management contract that we have to be able to access all the data that is needed for these reports, to be able to assess all of the areas for the Jedis. We've also developed policies and procedures for the zones and began the actual assessments. This was during the time that COVID hit. It was around April. Most of these motions, last motion was approved March 27th. You're well aware of all of the challenges that our department has had and the shifting of staff that we had to do. Nonetheless, we did continue to work on the Jedis, unfortunately, at a slower pace. One of the problems that we have is right now we do not have access to some of the data availability at a granular level. For example, unemployment. We have pre-COVID unemployment data down to the census tract. We do not have that right for this current unemployment. So although our Jedi zones will reflect the pre and the post, I just want to give you a heads up that the unemployment data that we're using, we're going to rely more on pre-COVID because that's what we have access to at a council, not only at a council district level, but also at a census tract level. The other thing that was delayed was the site visits. They were postponed due to health concerns for our staff, the global pandemic, stay-at-home orders, etc. We have resumed the site visits. As of last week, we did 2 different zones. One of the things that was apparent, I actually did this at my staff and I did one of the staff, my colleague and I did one of the site visits. One of the things that we found was inconsistencies with the data that we had. For example, vacancy. We were looking at one area. The reports that we were able to pull from CoStar, which is what we're using for vacancy rates, showed little to no vacancies. However, walking the actual street, we noticed a lot more vacancies. We also had to determine whether the businesses were closed because of COVID, because they're shut down, or because it was a non-working day. This was a Thursday morning, so most of the businesses should have been open. So even though we thought we were already to the finish line, we have to come back and say, okay, what is the vacancy rate? What is the true vacancy rate of the area? there is a great need in the community for this program. The pandemic has caused, even though it skewed some of our neighborhood data, the availability for these businesses to use some of the services. For example, if they need to do any type of remodel for alfresco dining, or they need to change any of their infrastructure, the permit cost reduction that we have in place for the Jedi zones would be an excellent use for these small businesses. Like we said before, the challenges for completing the staff. Right now, we have one staff that's currently assigned to the Jedi zone and other programs. One of the programs that she just finished as well was the food and beverage report that is now with council. It's the same person that we have working on all these projects. So although it sounds like if we're beating a dead horse, we do ask for your patience. We will get all of these assessments done. We're hoping to have at least one or two done for shortly. But we do have to kind of reshift and rethink and reimagine how these reports are done and what data is presented. We did have 4 positions approved last year with some ECTC money, which we're very grateful for. Unfortunately, because that was one-time funding, we were not able to fill any of those positions during the current state of our city. We have requested in our new budget that those be lowered to 2 positions, and we're able to hire them, kind of splitting the money and splitting the positions. So if we're able to have 2 positions for 2 years, that would be helpful in launching these programs and getting the businesses the assistance that they need. Open for any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you very much. And let me first begin, Ms. Hernandez and Ms. Rodriguez, by thanking you and General Manager Carolyn Hull and all of the staff at EWDD for taking this on with gusto and really working to make this something that is of benefit to our local economy, to the local businesses, to the jobs that rely upon them. You've really gone above and beyond the call to try to take these concepts and make them real. And so I want to really sincerely thank you for your great efforts, especially under the extraordinary challenges of late that you just described, which make your jobs geometrically more difficult. So thank you. And I guess somewhat related to that, I would like to encourage you to, as you move forward, if there are things that this committee or the council has asked of you that are causing progress to be slower rather than faster, then I would invite you to share those things with us. If you feel that you are doing unnecessary reporting or documenting that really doesn't add very much to this equation, I would ask that you let us know that. It's critically important that we be nimble with this and that we be fast with this, because people are suffering right now. Businesses are dying right now. And it's just imperative that we not let the perfect be the enemy of the good on getting help out there to them. So if we are creating bureaucratic barriers or delays, or attaching an anchor to your boat as you're moving forward, please don't be shy about letting us know that. Because to Mr. Blumenfield's point earlier about not getting in the way, we often do that. And this council often does that, because well-intentioned ideas sometimes, when they're rolled out in actual implementation, sometimes cause that sort of bureaucracy that is exactly what we're trying to avoid with this whole program. So that's my broad general comment on that. More specifically to the point of being nimble, I'm wondering, the post-COVID-19 environment, as you pointed out, is significantly different, and many of the things that we have thought of as offering as incentives within Jedi zones may be things that are less relevant now than they were before. Like perhaps facade improvements in certain areas are less important now in a time when in-person businesses are being asked to close and more of the commerce is going online. So there may be things like that in your professional view we might want to adjust. I don't need to put you on the spot with that now, but I would just suggest that if there are things like that we can transition, you should feel the greatest degree of liberty as we can express, I think, from this committee and the council in doing that. And if there's things that we need to change as a policy matter, I hope you'll bring those back to us expeditiously so we can do that.
And we can actually do that in the first of many Jedi Zone reports establishments. We can make those recommendations and then carry on forward. So we will definitely look at that and see if there's anything that we can improve, change, shift, etc.
Terrific. And, honestly, the same goes for the sets. If there's things that we need to rethink and revisit because of the post-COVID-19 environment, we need to do it quickly. Ms. Hernandez, did you want to jump in because your mic is open?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for your support and definitely for the suggestion of us bringing forth any proposals to improve our programs. We appreciate it, and we will reassess and regroup and bring back recommendations.
Great, thank you. My final point before I go to my colleagues who both want to weigh in on this as well. Your point, Ms. Rodriguez, about not having current unemployment data by census tract is troubling because it's going to affect not just this policy, but a million other things we're doing right now. And the truth is that COVID-19 likely has impacted this city in a geographically disproportionate way. And there probably are places that have had a more significant spike in unemployment and a more significant spike in business vacancies than other geographies. So that's critically important for us to know, not just for Jedi zones, but for all of the policy making that we're doing around economic development. So what is the hang up there? And is there anything that we can do to be helpful in trying to expedite more current data in those areas?
We can. I don't know. I will have to get back to you. I think some of it is just the time that it takes for unemployment data to kind of be reported and then disseminated to the granular level that we need. So I don't know how we can expedite that. I will take it back to our management and see if there's a way to do that. Our GM was part of LEDC prior. There might be some other data sources that she might have access to that we're not aware of, but we will definitely take that back and see how we can get that to council district. And I mean, if we can do council district, that would be great.
Yeah.
But even more, census tracts, because there is, even using older data, there is definite differences in census tracts, even within a council district for unemployment. So that is something that we do have to look into.
And I assume that the original source of that data is the state unemployment department, which we know is struggling just to keep up with getting people their checks. So to expect updated data may be a lot to ask, but it just going to be really important, I think, for all of us to have that sooner rather than later. Okay, Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you. My comments are relatively minor. I want to associate myself with everything Mr. Krikorian said, especially the congratulations to the folks who've done the work and the thanks. I just want to honor as a community organizer, getting out of the car, getting from behind a computer and from behind, a binder full of paper and actually knocking on doors and talking to human beings. I cannot say enough for how meaningful that is. I think a lot of our city's problems and frankly the world's problems would be solved if we could just figure out how to do that more. So mad props to you all and everybody who did that. Thank you directly from me and the entire council on that one.
I will say, council member, that's probably one of my joys, even though it's tough to see the vacancies. I completely agree with you. Getting out to the community, it was eye-opening, and it's something that we need to do.
Yes, there's no replacement for it. There's no replacement for it.
Hear, hear. Just be sure to do it socially distanced and wearing a mask. Mr. Blumenfield?
Yeah, and amen to that, and echo what both my colleagues have said. Just two quick things. Wanted to drill down a little bit. Did you give us, or let me just ask you, is there a timeline for the designation of the Jedi zones at this point? I know you mentioned some of the things that are going into it, but
we're hoping to have something by December. We're going to try to have it before one of the committees before the recess. It will not be all of the reports. I will be clear, because we need to try to finish one with all of the data that we have and then go on to the next ones. We're also going to use some of the recommendations put forth by this committee to see how we can streamline and what adjustments we need to make. So we're hoping to have that by December. At this time, I can't commit to a date. We finished, like I said, last Thursday, we finished 2 zones for the site visit. We still have to write them up. We have pictures as long as everything else. So that is going to take some changes to the report that we thought we had ready.
got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean this, and the world is changing beneath us. Not just COVID, but the presidential transition will affect some of this. Current president was focused on the opportunity zones. Biden has criticized those zones, but he said he wouldn't cancel them, but he would try to make them less of a tax haven and more of an equity opportunity, which can mean all sorts of things, and I hope he's able to do that. But are you guys starting to look at, or how do you plan on incorporating some of this sort of very changing approach on the federal level in terms of the economic incentives with our economic strategy?
That's going to take some thought. We kind of are using the opportunity zones. I mean, we're using the opportunity zones to as a qualifying area for the Jedi zones, which will bring incentives into the area. So
Right.
we are kind of transitioned already into that space. We will have to look to see what changes once they are implemented. What changes are going to be implemented? How do we have to pivot? If one thing that COVID has taught us is that we have to be nimble and be able to pivot at a moment's notice. And that's not just for us, but for the city, for the business community that we have, in order to continue for them to be thriving and stay viable. We have to pivot with them and guide them, help them. I do like the suggestion of helping some of the smaller businesses. The zone that we visited had a lot of mom and pop shops that didn't have, let me take that back. We're not aware if they had a lot of like Yelp reviews or websites that they can do. So we can bring in some of that technology into those storefronts so that maybe they can bring in more business, helping them develop a website, do mobile payments or online payments for some of their products. That might be helpful as well. So it's pivoting along with the businesses.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion about this matter, again, thank you very much to EWDD. Appreciate your work very much. Do we need to actually vote on noting and filing this report?
Committee members, as a verbal report, no action is taken.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. That will bring us to item number 3.
Thank you.
Item number 3, reports from the mayor and the chief procurement officer relative to the development of a regional solicitation platform to replace the Los Angeles Business Assistance Virtual Network.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I understand we have a presentation on this matters. Do we need to put something up on the screen?
I believe my team will start sharing the.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, again, my name is Shannon Hoppus. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer with the Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation. And I am joined here today by Ted Ross, General Manager, and Joyce Edson, Executive Officer of ITA. They are available for questions as well, in addition to my team who can jump in at any moment. We're really happy to be here to share with you what we've been up to the last few months. I start these presentations by saying they're a true labor of love and a true public-private partnership in the way we've gone about the build out of this technology. And we can start by thanking all those who've been involved, which has included, of course, this body, particularly your office, council member. Hannah's been amazing at helping to guide us. And before that, Julia, you know, the board has been involved, as well as contract administration, EWDD, ITA, the LABC, the Chamber of Commerce, the LA Coalition, the Valley Economic Alliance, and members of this task force that we'll acknowledge as well. Again, a labor of love, all wanting to see this move forward and understanding the need for this even more so now as we look to recovery from COVID. As you are well aware of our landscape, our procurement is our second largest spend, representing $4.7 billion each year, with 3,600 RFIs, RFQs, and RFPs being administered each year. The problem with that has been that we haven't really been in a position to optimize procurement processes, and we often lose a lot of our purchasing efficiencies. The city of LA doesn't have a modern database that can provide metrics for policymakers. We are finding ourselves, especially in this at this time, really having to draw upon our departments to manually go through their contracts, to understand the details of our contracts, and report into various initiatives, including the mayor's office, the council offices, as it relates to their districts. And as you're aware, our city has many systems. Unfortunately, many of them are siloed. So what we started doing over the last few months after leaving your committee, we created two advisory task force. And one was composed of city department representatives, and one was built of external business leaders to advise on the development strategy for this solicitation and procurement system. It is a very lengthy list that's in front of you here, and the businesses range from small to large. And you can see real estate, we have small glass shops involved, we have sports and entertainment represented, we have a vast variety of representation from the business community. And then on the right side, you have the list of departments that have been actively involved in informing this development. So the task forces identified pain points that have really been addressed through various reports even before this, but we wanted to make sure that we were on target. And so these are the 5 critical areas that were identified. Understanding the 8 independent developed systems that manage procurement, none of which really speak to each other or have connectivity. We have about 54 paper-based forms that are required in contracting. We know that we have limited visibility into our procurement and contracting process overall from beginning to end. And contracting and procurement data is limited and not easily collected. And that's what I was speaking to earlier. So again, it becomes a very manual process for departments. Procurement policies are enforced on an ad hoc basis we say that by meaning that when policies are put in place, there's not a lot of accountability that we are able to enforce through our systems because we lose the sight of the process and accountability. So what we did is we worked with the task forces to present to ITA a development report. We partnered with the task forces, drafted the system requirements, and they included the workflows that encompass all current and new features for the solicitation and procurement system. We outlined in that report the pain points as well as the recommended solutions to those pain points, asking for centralized procurement systems through the Angelino account. So we hope to leverage that existing technology, digitize documents and operations for the bidding, approval, and review process, even more critical now as we look to a contactless government or way of operating. Transparent procurement activities for approval process, meaning that we can see as procurement moves through the process where it might be sitting, how long it's sitting there, where the needs are, and maybe where future policies might need to be made. We are working with ITA to create a data lake to house all procurement activities and contracts. So that's going to be a way for us to finally gather all of that data so we can make some very comprehensive policies. And in addition, we'll be housing all the procurement ordinances and policies in one centralized location. That's often the frustration, both internally and externally, is we have multiple websites with varying procurement information. So this next slide is a list of all the new procurement functionalities. It will be a fully modernized and digitized procurement process, flexible and secure. We know we don't have that with our current platform, being that it's 20 plus years old. So we know that as we grow and as we pivot, the system will able to do that as well in a very nimble way. We are looking to an updated outreach method in accordance with our business inclusion program. Right now, it's a policy and program that is very one-sided and dependent on the prime to outreach to subcontractors. This system is really going to be built so there's a marketplace of such in that subcontractors are able to identify and even follow the prime contractors that they wish to connect with. There's going to be an enhanced vendor profile and single ID sign-on with the Angelino account. The vendor profile is critical because right now vendors have to submit the same paperwork for each procurement they do. So if they do procurement with 5 different departments, they have to submit 5 different sets of forms. So right now this is going to be a profile, or we're building it out to be a profile that multiple departments can access. And the centralized solicitation clearinghouse, we know that was a big component when we worked with LABC in your office in anticipation of the coming events that we expect to be here in LA. Ultimately, in phases in the future, we hope to connect a lot of the payment information so we understand it and it's more visible and not just accessible to people that have access to FMS. We're going to be doing more real-time holistic contracting. We're going to have that data more available than we ever have before. Again, the regional profile, bringing in that ability to house not just the city's solicitations, but any and all those who wish to participate on this platform, and increase compliance without added manual and administrative processes. This is more important now than ever, as we will lose employees to SIP, as we expect employees to retire. This is going to hopefully ease the burden on what now is an often manual process. And we know that this is going to start to be a good resource, or continue to be a good resource for small, local, minority, and women-owned businesses. So this is our development strategy, just briefly. It's about digitizing the actual process and documents, creating that centralized database, and then we know how critical it'll be to onboard and train all of our end users, both internally and externally. And then again, that review for further centralization and integration will continue even after these phases are developed. We understand that this platform needs to be evolving and grow with us over time, and not just be something we set up and let be. But again, it needs to evolve as things evolve in our own city. This next slide is just such a great visual. I don't expect anyone to see the workflows, but those are actually real workflows that we went through in developing with the task forces and understanding. And that small, or that circle with the pink boxes, is Bavin's current functionality. So that's what Bavin does now. We are hoping to build out all this other functionality that you see in the background. So it's really not fair to say that this is simply a re-platforming of Bavin. It is really so much more and so much bigger than that. And it's so important for us to all realize that this isn't just a re-platforming. It's metrics, it's transparency, it's accountability that we just don't have in this area right now. So a lot of excitement, a lot of work went into that. I think it really actually just says it all. So we created a timeline. We worked very closely with ITA on what was feasible. Again, anticipating that, or hoping that people, positions, funding stays intact. But we worked with them on a timeline that was doable. We hope to roll out the first phase, or it's anticipated the first phase rolls out in January 2021, with the future phases rolling out out about 6 to 8 months thereafter. This slide gives you a little more detail as to that phasing and what you can expect in those various phases, all needing to be, as you'd expect, adjusted as time goes by and we understand our landscape in the coming months. But this is the hope for the phasing over the next few months. And that pretty much concludes our presentation, and we're all available for questions if you might have any.
Well, thank you very much. Terrific work. I'm really, needless to say, beyond excited that we've finally gotten to this point after a long road to get here. So thank you for your leadership and persistence in seeing us through. I do have a couple of questions that I wanted to raise. First, I don't know if there's any way that you can quantify this, but when people who talk about procurement, we start to get, a little bit, nerdy about this, and, people don't, I think, fully appreciate the magnitude of the impact of what you're talking about. So whether with data or anecdotally, can you talk about the cost of the inefficiency that results from failing to optimize our procurement system? Can you talk a little bit about what the city and its taxpayers lose as a result of our current system compared to what we hope to achieve with the expanded opportunities that you've just presented.
Yes, everyone wants to know the numbers, and that's been very difficult for us to quantify over the years. But when we've benchmarked against other companies who have done similar efforts, we've had similar budgets, similar spending habits. We know it's in the millions, multi-millions of dollars. When we've had other outside consultants come and look at our procurement spend, they typically apply simple calculations to the ability or propensity or the possibility of saving, and that's usually about 15-20% on your actual spend. We've had other agencies, again, with similar budgets say that when they centralize their payments, when they centralize their data and the functions and been able to actually leverage these larger contracts, it's been 200 million, 300 million in savings. I mean, it's substantial enough. And it's really such a responsibility of ours to manage this well, especially in this day. But I have faith, I have hope. Ted, do you have anything to add to? And that doesn't even count. And unfortunately, when we do these calculations, very few people want to hear about the savings around staff and the time. That is huge because the redundancies in these contracts are so frequent. We get pleas from city attorney and CAO on, can't you understand how many departments are, procuring and contracting for the same thing? Do you know how many of these contracts I have to review that are for the same service over and over again? But because we don't have that visibility, we're saying, okay, well, we're trying to gather it, but it's very ad hoc. It's very haphazardly. It's not in a smart fashion. So hopefully this is going to give us that ability, and really that workflow document that you saw includes that 1022 process, really gathering the information from the budgetary side and understanding at the very time a department starts to even build their budget, we start to be informed of their contracting needs. So we can get visibility into them at the very onset and start making the connections of the different departments' needs and understand when we should insert ourselves. Because the goal isn't to insert a procurement office in every procurement. That doesn't make sense. But these larger scale ones, these enterprise license agreements, one that we just recently did with Adobe Sign with ITA, once we administered that policy around e-signatures, we actually assumed most departments had their application in place, but they didn't. And so we executed that agreement alone and saved hundreds, I think a couple $100,000, and that's just so far on that one contract. So it's just to give you a sense of if we could really coordinate and build this out, we have the room to save millions of dollars, no doubt.
And I appreciate that you're talking about getting that process started early on with department heads, because if a department head is writing out the specifications for procurement to meet the needs of that department, and we have an active and current procurement in another department that meets 98% of those needs, it is really stupid to start that process over again, have a different contract be written by the city attorney, lose the economies of scale that you get from having a larger procurement. But that's what we do. And if there's anything that makes people lose confidence in government, it's the $800 hammer. And these are the sorts of things that we can help prevent by having more optimization. And by the way, also increasing the number of people who are willing to participate in the procurement process with the city, which increases competition, which also brings costs down. And I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I think Mr. Ross wanted to weigh in on this too.
Certainly, Ted Ross, General Manager of ITA. I sincerely appreciate the leadership that Shannon and her team have been providing in this area. It's not often that one piece of technology can deliver so much benefit to so many stakeholders. I think from the business perspective, it's about simplifying their interactions, making bid opportunities much easier to access to promote the very competition you're describing, council member. I think for the government side of it, city departments, it's about automating. It's about reducing all these manual efforts and making it a much more streamlined, easy to understand, and consistent process across departments. And I think the last benefit is for city management, and it's the metrics aspect. The fact that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Now, throughout the process, we're going to have a system that demonstrates where it is in all the different components, which allows metrics and allows much more data to help manage a process. We're very proud of the effort that we're working on, and we're really looking to help deliver great things in this project.
Great. Thank you. Related to what you just said, Mr. Ross, one of the slides in the presentation indicated that there were 50 some different paper forms that were required to be submitted, and that we've moved to digitizing those so that can be done virtually, which is great. I wonder if we have taken any steps to reduce the number of the forms that are required, whether in paper or digitally, just to reduce the workload and burden on potential bidders, which is so important for small businesses in particular, who don't have expediters and lobbyists and lawyers to do this. And so it means somebody taking time away from, being with their kids after dinner to fill out, 18 more forms that some council member in 1976 thought was important that we require of all of our companies that we do business with. And we never go back and look at that stuff in order to reduce it. We only add to it. So has there been a process by which we're trying to cull some of the stuff that no longer seems necessary in the 21st century?
Yes, to your point, simply automating a broken process doesn't really create a great user experience. So having a very efficient way to jump over 56 hoops doesn't really make it all that much better for you. And so while we have technology that allows you to enter information once and it automatically copies it to all the other different areas, we're working very closely with Shannon and team for true business process improvement. I don't know, Shannon, if you'd like to weigh in on that.
Yes, that's a big focus. Really trying to get our arms around all the layers and the continued layers. And we're working with city attorney on what the possibilities are in even creating sunset clauses in future policies, just so at least it forces the council, the city to revisit things that are being put in place now. So we're looking at how to craft some of those those current and future policies. But yes, definitely revisiting the past policy and seeing where the will is or ability is to do away with some of the layers, the ones that make sense.
Great. One step that I think may be helpful in that, and with regard to all of the recommendations, really, and everything that we're doing, I would like to ask you to make this same presentation to the city's Small Business Commission and actually get their recommendations and suggestions as to what we have on the table now and what we might still be able to do to improve it further for the small business community.
Happy to. And if any of you have groups that you would like us to speak with, and we can certainly do that. And I stress each time we give this presentation that what we love about this new system is again, it's not to remain stagnant. This is going to be a continuous improvement, continuously evolving system. So it's not as if you didn't get in the beginning, that it's going to be a system built around people that made the decision back in 2020 and now they're long gone. It's gonna be a system that does grow with us, and it has that flexibility, which is so important to note. And you don't realize how important that flexibility is until you don't have it, and that has been our case for so long. And so we're really excited about what's being built right now.
Thank you. And my final point is on, somewhat related to that, is on outreach. We can have the greatest, most whiz-bang system in the world, and it does no good if the relevant people don't know about it, and particularly if business communities that are currently, underrepresented and not participating in procurement don't know about it. And I will just give one example of this that always informs me on this. 8 years or so ago, we started the local business preference in procurement, and probably 3 years after that, I was in a committee, I think a budget committee hearing or something, and we had all of the leaders of all of the local chambers of commerce, the minority chambers of commerce, and other business leaders who were in the room. And when this came up in conversation, they were looking around at one another as though this was the first time they had ever heard of it. So if the Greater Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce knows about something, but no one else does, we're not doing our job. And that really resonated with me as an example then. And I think, much of the objective here is to create cost efficiency and realize those sorts of benefits. But the other and perhaps more important objective of all of this is to bring more of this work into our local economy, make it more accessible to a more diverse group of businesses for the benefit, the larger economic benefit of the entire city and region as well. So extensive and long-lasting and persistent outreach is going to just be a key element of this. So thank you again all very much. Members, questions, comments? Mr. Blumenfield.
Mic is off. I echo your excitement about all this, and again, just thank you all for this. In your presentation, did you say January 21? Well, like when is this up and running for real? Like, did I hear that right?
Yes, you did hear it right. It's very aggressive, and Joyce can probably speak to more of the detail. But yes, the one-to-one platforming or replatforming of Bavin actually happens in January 2021 with some minimal additional functionality in January, but the actual moving of the platform happens January 2021. Joyce, did you want to add any more detail to that, or Ted?
Yes, our launch is planned to occur no later than January 31st, 2021. And there will be a fair number of enhancements also included that we received from the focus groups that Shannon and her team conducted. They were considered the highest priority. Those will go in at that time. We have additional phases 2 and 3 already drafted out. And so we are planning on making this a continual improvement application. So you should see upgrades every 6 months at a max.
So when this comes in on January 21, you mentioned there are eight departments have their own system. I don't remember if the number was 8, but a number of them have their own systems. Do all the other systems get phased out, or do they get eliminated at that point? Or is January 21 when it's there, or can everything be consolidated at that point? You're shaking your head no?
No, I didn't know if Joyce wanted to answer it or not. No. We identified 8 various procurement systems. So that includes FMS, that includes CFMS, or the City Clerk's Database of Contracting, all the disparate, LA Bavin, all the disparate systems that all perform some function of procurement that don't speak. Ethics Commission has their database that houses contracting information, but none of them have connectivity. So that connectivity will be happening throughout the different phases in order to get the metrics from those different systems. But that's really not probably happening more till phase 3, right, Joyce? Is that's more phase 3.
So it's not, because that's the true test, is once we remove all of the safety nets or these other things, and we're all on one system. But that's
but it's not but it's not necessarily going to keep departments who own those systems from operating them. It's just that we're finally going to have all of the information in one space, but it's not going to mean departments can't continue to have their databases serving them however they might need to. But right now, we don't have connectivity to proprietary information. The bigger goal is to make sure that information gets fed into these systems that are being created here, but it's not going to ever keep the proprietary departments from developing their own systems for their operational needs. It's just we need the connectivity primarily.
This is going to connect all those systems?
It's going to connect the data points around procurement that we need to make holistic procurement decisions and policies.
I don't know why I'm struggling a little bit in terms of, so a department put aside.
Building a unicorn is what's happening.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax. But city departments, they're going to have to feed their data into this system starting January.
No, Joyce, it's mainly the APIs that are going to be developed so we can pull the data sets into the system that is being created. Joyce, you probably can speak to it better than I can. I know a little bit of this language.
So the Bovenry platform allows us to grow the functionality that a lot of shadow systems have been built to meet that need. So we'll be able to retire a lot of shadow systems that departments have created. The primary systems, FMS, and those kinds of systems, they will still stay. But smaller systems like the one that ethics has created in order to do the ethics reporting, those we are hoping to be able to retire because we will pull everything into one single database that ethics can then just access the data to do their reportings from. So it will be a combination of things. We're going to maximize the enterprise services and systems that we've got out there so that they do more and we get more bang for our buck there. Eliminate the shadow systems so that people get what they need, but they go to more system of records to do that. It'll also improve our ability to do more accurate data analysis on this because we will be going to system of records that have a complete picture.
And that was why it was so important to get into the weeds with the departments in understanding the different data sets they needed for their own operations. So we worked with CAO, so we understood that process more. I'm sorry.
They should want to migrate to this new system, but to retire these other systems, what is the technical SIP program that we need to get all of those programs to retire and get them all into this new system?
Well, I think that's been part of our roadshow or our task forces and making sure that they've been included in the development, because the intent was to develop this for them, for the departments, for the businesses, ensuring that we were capturing the reporting needs that they all had, both internally and externally, because the business community said, well, we're not going to use a system if we can't get reports out of it that we are required to do around our procurement. So that's why the intense meetings with these groups is to really understand the needs. So we were building something that was tailored for them, so we can expect them to use it.
Right.
And from the department side, I mean, you know, you'd expect resistance around these things just because they're big, they're new, but I can't tell you the excitement and relief that there's been from the department side, especially the frontline workers who do contracting every day, in us taking the lead and identifying the needs, working with them one-on-one to understand their business needs, and really hoping that this is something we deliver, because it's just been a long time coming, and it just creates a lot of additional work. You know, years ago, I worked on this. I started on procurement 6 years ago in the mayor's office around procurement reform, and ethics came to us literally when they had been instructed by council to create their database of contractors, and they had the literally the bag full of money that you all had given them and said, can anyone help us spend this money, because we don't know what to build. And they were kind of turned away at the onset. I mean, they had even come to city clerk at one time, and we said, well, we don't think that really fits here. We were having earlier discussions with them on whether it fit into the overall procurement technology, but we weren't ready for it then. And I made the promise to them then and said, one day we're going to incorporate your database into whatever we build. But they had to go off and build it on their own because we just weren't in the position. But they wanted to offload it or to you know, get assistance from anywhere else, because they just didn't have the bandwidth in their own department to build that system. But legally, they were required to build it. And now it's another siloed system that is a manual process for departments to have to do quarterly in reporting their contracts. And we do it very haphazardly. I'm in the mayor's office right now. I get a random email that says, has anyone done any contracting in this last quarter? And that's how we hope to capture our contracting, you know. And so departments, again, this was built with them in mind. They weren't left out of the process. This has been a very inclusive process, a true partnership in building what the city has been needing.
That's great, and I'd love to, as we follow up over the next months, you know, see how that migration goes. You know, and because that's part of the, you know, we can have the best system in the world, but if all these folks don't actually move to it.
Agreed. I think the leverage that we have, though, in terms of the solicitation platform is right now the mayor's executive directive from administrations ago does require and mandate the use of one solicitation platform. So that ED is still in place and is something we can probably update to reflect this current system. But departments have been put on notice that this will replace Bavin, and like Bavin, you will be mandated to participate and post your solicitations here. In the background, it's really going to be doing all that work that they do on their end anyway. So it really does start with the solicitation, because once we have that, it takes off from there, and that mandate is already in place.
Great, thank you so much. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris Dawson, anything on this? Okay. Well, again, Shannon, Ted, thank you very much to you and your teams. Really terrific work. As you said, it's never-ending work. It will be work that will always continue to develop and that we'll be continuing to work on. But that's a good thing. Being nimble that way instead of being cemented to the way we've always done things is the way a well-run city should run. So
I keep reminding my staff it's job security.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. And since we received a presentation on that, I think we need to note and file this. But before we do, in addition to thanking you and your teams. I also, on this matter, while we have it open, want to thank Hannah Levine of my staff. This will be Hannah's last meeting of this ad hoc committee before she moves on to another opportunity. And so since she joined us, she has run with the objectives of this committee with gusto, and all of the other work that she's done as part of my policy team has been really invaluable and has advanced us to this point on this policy and so many other things. And so I just want to thank Hannah very much as well, and wish her all the best.
Thanks, Councilman.
And with that, Mr. White, we are going to note and file this matter.
Yes, sir.
We need to call the roll.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Actions to note and file the report. Councilmember Krikorian.
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Harris Dawson.
Yes.
The matter is noted and filed.
Very good. And there being no other business before this committee, thank you all very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.